Andy, would you like the lava lamp? Okay. Trying to help out.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we had to.
Oh, hold on. Oh, there, my mic's on now. Can you hear me?
Don't be walking in. No. Big soldier with the uniform.
General
No.
military policies.
Yeah.
Academy.
Yeah.
Staff, A,
Yeah.
B, the new business, old business, agenda format.
Religion.
I think I broke the chair.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you stay down?
Good, I think.
You have an extra one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then here's,
All right. What am I
if
gonna
you
eat?
have any additional topics
go at this
come up for discussion, 2 pages for that. You can just
Are you
skip
okay?
it if you don't need it.
You all right?
No, I don't know. Go straight to report.
Don't you know how to do?
Lever on the right side, most front lever.
Adjournment. Okay.
Make sure.
You want it?
That's fine. The chair and the others for the back.
The back.
I had a fantastic week.
I was excited because it said we're
Oh, no.
by 8.
For tonight.
We'll try and focus on one.
Right, great.
No, I had a good week. Good. It is 7:01. I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Directors to order. Good evening. I'm Eric Greenberg, Chair of the FY24 CA Board of Directors. Please remember that tonight's meeting is being live streamed. You can find the agenda and background materials for this evening on the CA Board of Directors webpage. Links to these documents can also be found in the description section of our YouTube live stream for those watching the meeting there. If you're virtual, please mute your microphones unless speaking. If you're in the room, please ensure that all cell phones are silenced. Raise your hand to speak and I'll record the names in the order which I see them. If you're virtual, please use the chat feature. As we move through the meeting, I will introduce each item on the agenda. Before a vote is taken, I will restate a motion as well as who motioned and seconded. If at any point you have trouble hearing me or any member present, please say so. Tonight's timekeeper is Sky Anderson.
Here.
I will now call the roll. Sky.
Here again. I'm here twice.
Dietrich. Reg.
Here.
Karen.
Here.
Chris.
Here.
Helen.
Here.
Dennis. Keith.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Andy.
Here.
And I am here. 2, announcement of closed special meetings held or to be held. The Risk Management Committee meeting held a closed meeting at CA headquarters on January 25th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Committee members present were Susan Krabbe, Dennis Matty, Reg Avery, Karen Emery, Jim Hamilton, and Alan Klein. Sky Anderson also attended. All Risk Management Committee meetings are closed under Maryland Homeowners Association Act, Maryland Code, Real Property, Section 11B, 11144. Consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. Therefore, no vote to close was taken. The Architectural Resource Committee held a closed meeting at CA headquarters on February 12th, 2024 at 1:05. Committee members present were Deb Bach, Carolyn Payton, Karina Keiko, Eileen McNamara, and Carol McPhee. The vote to close the meeting was 5-0. The meeting was closed under Maryland Homeowners Association Act, Maryland Code, Real Property, Section 11B, 11144. Consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. CA Board of Directors held a closed meeting at CA headquarters on February 5th, 2024 at 7:01 p.m. Board members present were Sky Anderson, Dietrich Asante Muhammad, Reg Avery, Karen Emery, Chris Fuchs, Eric Greenberg, Alan Klein, Keith O'Neill Jr., Bill Santos, and Andy Stack. The meeting was closed under Maryland Homeowners Association Act, Maryland Code, Real Property, Section 11B-1114, discussion of matters pertaining to employees' personnel, consultation with legal counsel and legal matters, and consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move
So moved.
the agenda.
I'll second it.
Andy moves. Reg seconds. Are there any objections to the agenda? The agenda is so moved as stated. That brings us to Columbia Update.
Good evening. So we had a couple of...
Your mic.
I'm sorry. Good evening. We had a couple of snow events, one just last weekend. And last meeting, I think we went through the brine application program, but there's more to it than that. And of course, the pathways support a lot besides just casual use, and the school system is a big part of the pathway usage system. So we've got a quick video.
So close.
Most
It's like everyone's at the movie theater waiting for the show to begin. Last couple
Should I get some
minutes.
popcorn?
Yes.
You have some?
Well, that's what the sock basket's for.
most, if not all, residents have a pathway along their neighborhood that leads up to a school. All schools use our pathway systems within and around Columbia. So in order for the students to be able to get to school, they rely heavily on Columbia Association to make sure that our areas are open and safe and de-iced. CAA staff can typically remove 6 inches of snow from all facilities, parking lots, pathways, bridges, boardwalks within an 8-hour period. Safety is our #1 goal. When preparing for snow events, CAA staff looks several days, weeks into the forecast leading up into the event. We started the Bride program because we wanted to look at different ways that we can both reduce costs, provide the same service, if not better services. Generally 24 to 36 hours before the event starts is when we do apply the Bride solution. Once the storm has already started to occur, we can't go out and spray at that point. We have to switch to the rock salt product. The other reason why we would use rock salt over the brine is if we had a pop-up storm. Right now, if the weather shifted, the brine needs time to dry for it to be active. The brine does have a different freezing point than your typical rock salt, which is why it's the new preferred method for pre-treatment. It actually can prolong how long it is before you have to plow or before you have to apply the rock salt. As a resident of Columbia, I surely want to make sure my family is safe and my neighbors are safe to get their children to school or just to get around in the community, to go to the fitness clubs, to go visit the swim center. I want to make sure that it doesn't change daily life. So it's my personal goal, and I'm proud to be part of a program that we can ensure the safety of our residents and our visitors.
A couple of interesting facts. During the last snowstorm, we got a call from the school system to help them out, which we did, because not all the pathways are ours, but we were happy to help where we could. And that the broom that you see is for pervious paving. You can't use a blade. You can't drop a snow plow blade on pervious paving. So where we have that, we broom it. And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your sentence.
no, I'm sorry.
Do we at least periodically let the county know that that's one way that we lower their budget?
Well, as a matter of fact, I told them that we wouldn't be lowering their budget. We're happy to help out when we can, but we need to reach an agreement.
Not just that, but the fact that they rely on our pathways that we maintain at our cost for part of their transportation system. To get kids to and from school. They use that, I'm sure, in terms of measuring how far it is from a house to a school. So they're relying on us. I don't want to charge them. I just want to make sure they know that we're helping them out in that way.
I think them calling us to ask for help is them knowing that we do most of the work. Anyway, so if you don't already know, February is Heart Month. And of course, the sport and wellness staff is fully committed to cardiovascular health every day in the clubs. And we're also committed to, if there's a cardiovascular emergency, being prepared. We have about $150,000 worth of AEDs, automatic defibrillators, And that 150 doesn't include staff time to train, and the staff training is available to every CA employee at no charge.
CA celebrates American Heart Health year-round. One of the ways they do that is by offering free CPR classes to all team members, no matter what division or department you work for. We have over 500 lifeguards that are trained in not just community CPR, but also CPR from the professional rescuer. And in the last 2 years, we've certified over 500 CA team members in CPR. We do this to make sure that everybody feels comfortable in how they could help react in an emergency and hopefully prevent the loss of life. The new AEDs that we got are really special for a few reasons. They make it easy for us to use by telling you every step you need to do along the way. Not only can it analyze the heart rhythm and provide the correct shock, it can also give you feedback on how well you are doing compressions. Learning CPR and how to properly use an AED are super impactful. In general, somewhere around CA, we're using CPR, the AED, about once a year, and time really matters. The chance of survival drops 7% every minute until we can provide a shock. So by making sure that our team is well trained in how to respond quickly and effectively to help provide the best outcome possible. Anybody can benefit from knowing CPR. CA team members can benefit from it at work, which can then help out our community by potentially saving someone's lives. But in general, the more people who are certified gives more people the opportunity to save lives, which can help impact our community and our well-being in very positive ways.
We have so many terrific team members, and Adam Scott is absolutely one of them. He does a great job in training, has been here for a while now, is in the HR department. Recently left aquatics to move into HR, but he's absolutely terrific.
Where's the closest one of those devices to this room?
Right there.
That's right on.
There it is. Thank you.
Do I need to get it?
Depends on what happens in the meeting.
Later in the meeting, maybe? So text is art. We interact with young adults in a lot of ways. At the pools is the most obvious, but also at the art center, and this is an example of that.
Art is important because, to me, it opens up your ideas and you can really get the time to express yourself, and at the same time, sort of like a meditative thing to me, just relaxing and working on self-improvement and trying to be better.
It's a way to kind of express myself and get everything out through my hands. So I like that aspect of it. Art is important because there are certain people that don't like to talk, and art is a great way of getting all that inside of you out onto paper.
The communications team is working on what they call pop-up videos, and if you are or were a fan of VH1, and I think most of us in this room probably remember that or have heard of it. You probably heard of it. You didn't watch
That's
yourself.
Before our time, Dennis.
Yeah, it was just during my time. But with that being said, it's amazing the attention span that you have to meet when you're doing these videos is so short. But we've done a bunch of pop-up videos.
Are you calling our attention span short?
No, for you, I have 2-minute videos. The communications department asked me if I'd participate by doing a burpee, and I said, I don't think we can do a pop-up video that's 5 minutes long.
But we've got the AEDs.
We would have needed it. Anyway, there are so many terrific things that happen in this organization. I say it every time. It's a remarkable place, Columbia, and the people that make it work are behind the scenes every day doing remarkable.
You know what I think is really cool. I like seeing the content in there, but the short pop-up videos, all of those pieces, we're always talking around the table about engagement and wanting to engage more people in different age groups and all of those components. And I think it's really cool to see that evolution in terms of the videos and social media and all the things that are out there. So I appreciate that work. It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to resident speak out. Speakers will be asked to speak in the order in which they signed up. Individuals have 3 minutes for comment. Anyone representing an organization has 5. Following remarks, the board will have a chance to ask questions. Please mute your microphones when you are not speaking. We ask that speakers adhere to the 3 or 5 minute time limit when presenting their testimony, and for board members to limit questions or to stay within the allotted time period. Our first speaker today is Michelle Kripka, representing the Columbia Arts Center, or talking about the Columbia Arts Center.
Well, I'm part of it, but I'm not representing it.
Yeah, talking about it.
And this is a nice segue because I got to see a student at the Art Center. So thanks for doing that.
Thanks.
Okay. I've been a resident of Long Beach since 1979 and have been a member of the Columbia Association for most of those years. Our family has enjoyed the many benefits of living in Columbia and of CA and what it has to offer. I use the Athletic Club and Supreme Sports Club regularly and am aware of the frequent purchases made to provide the members with up-to-date equipment for their health and well-being. Upon retiring from a career as an English educator, I enrolled in a ceramic class at the Columbia Arts Center and have been taking classes since 2015. Each session I have taken classes with excellent instructors or have enrolled in an open studio. I am passionate about honing my skills with clay and take every opportunity to improve by also taking week-long workshops in the summer at Sugar Maples Art Foundation in upstate New York. I have entered and been accepted in several shows both locally and nationally as a result of what I have gleaned over the years. Most recently, I've been disappointed with the attention Columbia Association has given to the maintenance and improvement of the gas kilns of the Columbia Art Center. Within the past few years, CA purchased a new electric kiln for the Art Center, which fires work to cone 6. The current gas kilns, which fire work to cone 10, have been at this location since Antioch College was located at the building in the 1970s. Each of these kilns produces different results. The same finishes cannot be acquired with an electric kiln as with a gas kiln. Therefore, it is necessary to have both types of kilns in the Art Center. As with any important equipment or appliance, maintenance is required. However, after 40 to 50 years of maintenance and repairs, there is a point when a new gas kiln needs to be purchased in order to provide the students with quality firings. If one thinks of appliances such as ovens, refrigerators, and even automobiles, there is a life expectancy. When that time has been reached, it's time to purchase new ones. Gas kilns have improved over the years. Bailey Ceramic Supplies, as well as other companies, manufacture kilns which are programmable and come in a number of sizes to accommodate the work made by the students. Although they are costly, they will improve the results of the work that the students of the Columbia Art Center strive to achieve. Taking classes is expensive, and we expect our work to be fired in the kilns that work effectively. As enrollment of the new students increases, the need for a new gas kiln also increases. When work is fired in a timely manner, students are able to see the labor of their efforts and can use the results to inform their decisions for improving their future work. I am aware that the Columbia Art Center will be renovated this year. However, the students have not been informed about the purchase of a new gas kiln yet. It is time for the Columbia Association to purchase a new programmable gas kiln to provide the students of the Art Center with quality equipment. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration, everyone.
Thank you. Alan.
Do you have I don't expect you to be an expert, but do you have a sense of either how much a gas kiln costs or what's the differential between the gas kiln and electric kiln?
Yes. My son's a professor, a ceramic art professor at a college.
I expect him to be an expert.
And he is, and so therefore I know some information. About 2 years ago, his college bought a new programmable, and that's the essence of what we would need to have, gas kiln. I think it was an 18 cubic foot kiln, and it was $35,000.
Great.
Sounds like a lot of money, but if you consider how long ago Antioch was using these kilns, there were 5 and now we're down to 1.
I remember it.
And for several months, we did not have a kiln this fall. I waited 5 months to get my work fired.
Dennis?
So I'll confirm, but I think the gas kilns are part of the renovation project at the Art Center. I'll confirm that. The other thing that's interesting is I was in that Art Center many times, and in one of my roles, I was with construction, and I remember at that time, they didn't want, because we were looking to put a new gas kiln in there, and of course, nothing works like the old stuff. So we have looked at it, and of course, it was a little harder to get parts during COVID, but I'll confirm that we have new kilns in the program.
So we are getting a new kiln?
I'll confirm that.
Okay. I would be cheering right now if you said yes. Okay. Any other questions?
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Bob Dover. Bob Dover online?
No.
Okay. Next, we have Jill Hurwitz. Is Jill Hurwitz online?
No.
No.
No, the only one. Judge Chenko's on.
Oh, Joel's there.
Joel's on there.
Jill's there.
Is Joel there?
Yeah.
Yep, gotta move him over to the,
Oh, they just moved him over.
Okay. Is Bob also in there?
I don't think Bob's going to be here. I think he.
Bob sent an email earlier saying that he was not going to attend.
Right.
He sent his testimony written.
oh,
Just wanted to make sure.
where'd he go?
Okay, Joel, can you hear us?
There he is.
Joel,
He's muted.
you on mute?
Yes, you really do need to promote people to panelists unless you want to wait the time that it takes to do all that.
Well, we can hear you. You're up.
Joel Hurwitz, Vice Chair of the Harper's Choice Village Board, but speaking for myself. Speaking about your policies, I guess the first one goes to what just happened. You have a policy that you're supposed to ask questions, but not have a discussion. Considering that the information was quite useful, I think you should change the policy, and since you don't follow it anyway, about the kilns. Regarding the policy update that Karen submitted, I believe, as I said last time, that you should be amending the charter a number of specs to cover the easements and the open space leases and things, and to put leases back where it belongs in the charter. If you don't do it, you're making implicit amendments to the charter in your policy, but you can waive a policy much easier than the charter rules. So that's why these foundational things really belong in the charter. At your last meeting, there was quite a discussion about do easements ever end? And I kept wanting to say, why is nobody talking about construction easements that do end? Which I believe you proved some recently. I'm not sure how to deal with a policy that deals with when you get a construction easement versus giving the entity a license or a right of entry, because an easement would come to the board, and as you discussed the last time, a right of entry would be done by the staff. Regarding the policy update that's in your packet and review, I'm happy to see that. It shouldn't take so long, however, to review all these ones that really have no use, like one from 1986 on the bus route. But does anybody notice that about half of them are not CA board policies? They're Columbia Council policies. Apparently under the system that when they met as the council once a month. I complained before that you go to the trouble of having a chair and a vice chair of an entity that never meets again. So perhaps now you have a reason to have a meeting to review the Columbia Council policies. There's also, as it points out in a number of places, there were half votes back in the day. I don't know how that worked. So clearly that was not the CA board. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Helen?
Joel, would you be willing to send some recommended language for the charter amendments that you see that would be useful?
I'll try. I started marking up one, but I have to admit I got stuck trying to figure out how to cover everything in it without getting way too wordy.
Great. Then you have some sympathy for our position. Thank you, but I'd love to see it.
Any further questions? Thank you. Next, we have Richard Bannister. Richard online?
No, I don't.
Is Richard out there?
Eric, this is all I have.
You got Sharon.
You got the panelists.
You do Sharon. You've got Sharon up there.
Yeah, I gotta go in order. No, Richard? Amy Brooks? Is Amy Brooks out there? Amy?
Mine's short.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Amy Brooks, and I am a homeowner in the village of Oakland Mills. I'm here to clear up something that has been concerning some in my community, and they didn't feel comfortable, so they asked me to. Some people have seen current board members meeting in what appears to be a formal way outside of the CA Board of Directors meetings. According to members in the community, Karen Emery, Eric Greenberg, Renee Dubois, Ginny Thomas, Dick Bolton, and others have been meeting at the River Hill Village Center for some time. While I am not planning on running for the OMCA board again, I am still very concerned as a member of the community about the lack of transparency at these alternate type meetings. I know that the idea of a shadow government or shadow meetings is ethically concerning to both myself and many others in my neighborhood. So my questions are, why are these meetings happening? Do other villages know that these meetings are happening? Are all of the board members here aware that these private meetings with select board members, former board members, and other people are happening? That's all.
Do you have any questions? Karen?
Amy, would it upset you if you found out that board members were talking to each other on the telephone?
I'm bringing the concern.
I'm trying to understand what your concern is, because two of the people that you listed there are board members and none of the others are, and so I'm wondering what is your limitation for the board members? If we see each other out in the parking lot and we talk after the meeting, are we allowed to do that?
You know your ethics code better than I do, and there's been a lot of issues with ethics, and so the fact that people are concerned about it, if there's nothing to be concerned about, then it's just a minute and a half of your time that I've wasted.
Bill?
Ms. Brooks, thanks for bringing this to our attention. I've just asked the board members, what are you guys talking about? Can you guys talk about that here? Could you give us an idea?
Is that a question to Amy?
No, it's a question for you or Karen.
The question's for Amy.
So you don't want to answer that question?
You got to address it.
Not appropriate at this time.
Not appropriate in this venue.
All right.
Any further questions for the speaker?
Our community appreciates your transparency, especially with the past history lacking transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sharon Boyes, representing Protect Our Streams.
Hello, I am here, and very quickly, I'd like to say that Bill and Sky openly meet in public, and it's not a problem. Everybody's fine with it. So anyway, good evening, board members. Thank you for your continued dedication to our community, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. I really appreciate it. 2 meetings ago, I asked the staff what they were going to do with the $5 million budget surplus. I offered many ways the staff could invest the community's money back into improvements for the community. A few examples included setting up a dredging fund, buying or leasing their own dredging equipment, mitigating impacts from the Longfellow Stream project in all 3 locations, or they could have simply given the money back to us. They could have invested it back into the villages, but the one thing that I strongly urged them not to do was to give themselves the money of bonuses. If anyone deserves a bonus, it's the board. It's the board that deserves a bonus or some form of compensation for their time. Bonuses are usually given for exceptional performance or for an employee who's gone above and beyond what is expected of them, not just for sticking around. I was astounded when some of the budget surplus last year was handed out in retention bonuses. As I recall, Staff and employees' duties were severely cut back during that time due to COVID, but they rewarded themselves for still having to do less work from home with less expectations, but they still had a job as opposed to thousands of other folks who lost theirs. When some of the surplus during hard times for all gets spent on retention bonuses one time, that's pretty upsetting and seems a bit off to the community, but mistakes can happen. But when we have a surplus for the second year in a row that it's being spent on bonuses for the staff, that no longer feels like a mistake. That is perceived 100% as an on purpose, and I think requires some transparency and accountability. Shifting gears, there's been a lot of talk about iron flocculate in the community recently. This is a bottle of our restored creek water. So what is iron flocculate and why is it so bad anyways? It is common knowledge our groundwater and soil and even some of the rocks here in Howard County and east of here, east of the geological fall line, have a very high iron content that remains contained and stabilized when it remains undisturbed. But stream restorations disturb all of those things. For Tom Jordan, a senior scientist with the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, when referring to stream restoration, said they have another unexpected effect, and not for the better. The iron leaches and oxidizes when it comes into contact with the air at the water surface. The bacteria that feed on the iron deplete the oxygen in the water. This can create dead zones, which result in fish kills. The bacteria are the orange, fluffy, icky stuff you see in the water. The riparian and aquatic species safely harboring for the winter in the stream banks and stream beds in Longfellow and Town Center had 5 choices when the restoration occurred. If capable, flee for their lives to who knows where in the middle of the winter. Be crushed to death by the construction equipment. Be excavated away with the soil into a dump truck headed to and dumped out who knows where. Be pumped through a pump commonly called fish grinders and through a hose and then dumped out onto the ground or further downstream. Or if they somehow survived all of that, they were exposed to the iron flocculate bloom that coated everything and every inch of the stream. Before the oxygen is depleted, flock coats some species' gills and mouth parts, suffocating them. And some species eat it, but has 0 calories, so they fill up on it and starve to death. Let's talk about anyone suggesting this is healthy, a good thing, or natural at these levels. On a scale of mild, moderate, or severe, this would be severe greenwashing to the extreme. We have unique and diverse geology, and folks need to have a high level of understanding before they decide to permanently alter chemical, geological, and biological processes in an ecosystem in creek that is healthy, flourishing, and full of life. The flock blooms down when the groundwater connects with the surface water and when iron leaches from the soil into the stream. This process happens over and over. Our stream will remain biologically impaired for an undetermined amount of time, but probably forever. Our current land use policy allowed this project to happen. The policy is outdated, it's insufficient, and inadequate. An updated common sense, common courtesy, and common decency land use policy could have prevented this and protect our streams is calling on you tonight to please support this layer of protection for everyone. Thank you for your immediate consideration, and thanks again for letting me speak tonight. And be safe, it's crazy weather out there.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Alan.
Yeah, Sharon, I appreciate what you've done to educate yourself, and as you bring that education to us, it certainly outstrips what I could do individually. My question to you is, are you aware that the staff took, I think it was a 50%, at least a 25, if not a 50% pay cut during, at least postponement of salary during COVID to protect the CA budget?
I do know that, but their duties were completely decreased, right? And was there unemployment options available for them during that time for taking that budget? That does salary cut as well?
It was a salary cut, not an unemployment situation. They still were doing.
So they weren't eligible for any COVID funding for that?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Well, if that's the case, then I really would say that I would take that back. And I did say that the one time the COVID, they can kind of see that as, well, I called it a mistake, and maybe I'll take that back if that was the case. But when you do it 2 years in a row for that kind of money, you've got this list of projects that the community would really like to see happen and have been asking for. It just doesn't feel very good.
Thank you, Sharon.
Keith.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Sharon, this is Keith. Thank you again for your testimony. Do you think that there are people in the community that feel that the CA staff is doing an outstanding job to keep going and to take care of the day-to-day activities that are out there? Do you feel that there are people out there that feel that kind of support for the organization?
Absolutely. I think that there's people who expect different things from the organization. I mean, that's for sure. And I think that there are people who do have their expectations satisfied and fulfilled from CA. I think it's the people who have been directly impacted by some of these decisions and who see that they could also be directly impacted the same as some of these decisions that have been made is where the concern rises.
Awesome. Thank you. Sky.
Thank you.
Just a second. I have to do two things at once. Yeah, Sharon, you are representing Protect Our Streams tonight. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the organization, when it meets. I assume you're the president of the organization. Could you give us some more information?
We're a grassroots organization. We've never said that we were anything other than that. We talk frequently. We do have Zooms. It's not formal, like we meet every third Thursday. Sometimes we meet a couple of times a week. Sometimes we might not meet for a month or two. And I think that there's a couple of us who speak more often for the group. There is a smaller group of us who were the founders of the group, who generally do speak out in the community, the folks that you've seen. But I think that the group's up to a couple of hundred members who actually do stay informed and check out the Facebook page and participate that way. I hope that answers your question. We've never really said we're anything more than that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. That concludes Resident Speak Up for this evening. To limit interruptions during board discussion, all members of the general public will now be returned to the audience. This means you'll no longer be able to show your camera or unmute your audio, but you're more than welcome to stay as an attendee to watch the remainder of the work session. You can also watch a live stream on the CA live stream YouTube page. Thank you so much for your participation tonight. I'll now take a moment to allow the staff to make this transition, and we will take a 10-minute recess. So be back at 10:00.
Ginger ale? I can go run to the store and get it, you mean?
It's going so well until that moment. Party's out.
Yeah, 35K, that doesn't sound like very much money, honestly, unless you're buying 5. Unless you're buying 5 of them, right?
The other thing too is I think it's, from an energy efficiency standpoint, it probably fits into that category also. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe it's like buying a new refrigerator, right?
Yeah, your utility bill goes down.
And they also reached out to various organizations, including the veterans. Was it your organization?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. I was on there as well as another member. It seemed to be.
I'm not excited about going back out in the rain, honestly.
Oh, it's just one music.
You and Andy can dress in your CA gear, right?
It's I don't know what it is, but it's
Thank you.
No.
They are. All your swag.
But it's light when you need to.
Years ago,
Had an eye problem, my eyes.
Supreme. And it's no winter water. They just handed out hats. It's the best hat I have.
Everybody, yeah.
I still wear it.
Those beanies are popular.
You keep your head warm.
And I still have my Yay CA keychain.
That had to have been the most ridiculous slogan for us. Yay, CA. Talk about self-congratulatory.
I want to know, like, when I was a lifeguard, were they giving out all this kind of swag? I had to buy all my stuff. I had to buy my bathing suit. I had to buy everything.
They give it all out now, don't they?
I don't know. Do you get your do you get your lifeguard bathing suit free
I don't
now?
think my kids did. I would have paid for it if it wouldn't. It's not like they would have paid for it.
Right. I think my mom and dad probably paid for it because you had to buy your bathing suit if you wanted the sweatshirt, that kind of stuff. You had to buy everything.
Are we expecting to have someone?
Which is why I raided the supply closet regularly. Dennis would walk out of his office. Oops, Dennis knows. I told him, I promised him when I got elected to the board, I said, I promise I won't raid the supply closet. You'd hear Bob Bellamy would walk out and you'd be like, oh, I'm gonna take a whistle. I need a whistle, I need a few t-shirts.
Mergers and acquisitions.
Right? I wonder if they knew that every single kid at my pool was a junior lifeguard because they had junior lifeguard t-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody was using them for anything. At least that was how I'd run into my pool and the kids would be like, if you clean up all the chairs, you too could be a junior lifeguard. They're like, wanted that t-shirt bad.
So, this is cool. Like, how did you decide that this was like a thing that?
This one showed up.
So then he brought his own?
And I was like, okay, the sparkly one is okay, but I like the blob one. And then I saw it on Amazon, it was CA colors.
the capital and operating budget?
I move we approve the capital and operating budget.
Can I get a second? Second. So we got a motion by Andy, a second by Bill to approve the capital and operating budget. Is there any discussion on the budgets? There's no discussion at all on the budget?
Thank you for 5 months of hard work on everybody's part.
I think we should call a vote. Call a vote.
Okay.
Well, I guess I have one question. Given Dennis, your response about the kiln, if this budget is passed, would it, and that, I'm not asking. It would accommodate. That was.
It can accommodate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, there, before I call a vote, there was a request by IAT for $200,000. So I will, the chair will make a motion to add a $200,000 grant for IAT. Can I get a second on the amendment?
Second.
Get a second on the amendment. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Where do you expect to remove, to what program will you take $200,000 from?
We could take it from cash, from the surplus.
No, you can't. There's
Good.
no surplus for fiscal year 25.
We could take it from last year's cash.
It's not how budgets work.
That's not how you do budgets.
It's not how budgets work.
Oh, man. I gotta run
Every now
some
and again, I understand something.
interesting budgeting here. Well,
Mr. Chairman, if we're going to entertain last-minute amendments to the budget, we need to find a place to take the money from. We can't just invent $200,000 in revenue. And we haven't had a chance to build that into our budget policy for the last couple of months here.
Understood.
So where would we get the money from?
Well, he doesn't have to answer the question.
I don't have to
That's a
answer.
question to the board.
He made the motion. I figured maybe you had a...
I thought Reg made the motion.
Oh, I
seconded it.
Rich seconded.
The chair made the motion based on the request coming from IAT.
Thank you.
So to give a little background, IAT generally makes a request every year. We got the request a little late this year. Their requests generally are in the 200K realm. So this is not an unprecedented request. So I'm just making the, yes, Bill?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, how late was that request?
It was pretty late.
It was 48 hours ago?
It was pretty late. I will not disagree that it was not late. Keith?
When we were discussing, discussing this area of the budget, we walked through and we had a conversation, and I even tried to push and say, hey guys, when we're making this decision, that means that no other organizations are getting any types of grants. And the way that we worked that out, if we recall, and I don't remember the exact dollar amounts, but there was a large portion of it that went to the veterans memorial that's going to be put together, and then the other portion of it was going into the CEO's budget for discretion. We spent a significant amount of time talking about this, and we all understood and agreed at that point. We can change our minds, but we all understood and agreed at that point that we weren't addressing any other grants from any of the other organizations that typically, request money. So,
Karen?
I mean, I remember Keith saying that, and I remember the general discussion, but there was never a motion that we agreed on that, was there?
No, it was a
Right,
statement.
so it was just a general discussion. I don't think we ever came to agreement that we wouldn't allow, I'm not saying this is right, but I'm just saying I don't think we ever came to any kind of agreement. We won't allow any more last-minute additions.
Yeah, and I wasn't, just to answer that, I wasn't stating that there was a formal board
Oh, okay.
motion or anything. I think that the nature of what we do here is discussion and making some statements and asking for clarification from boards and making sure that we have clear statements about what we're about to do.
Yeah, and then my follow-up is just to Bill. You don't want to fund the IAT at all? You don't think we should fund them? I mean, I'd like to know if we don't give them the $200,000, what happens?
So I've got my hand up, and Sky got.
We got a queue here. So I got a queue. I saw Susan's hand first, and then we'll go around. So Susan?
So I just, this is quite late, and it's not a new organization. It's not like the process is not well known. And I just want to remind you that there's still an outstanding audits that have not been completed, and so that's for FY '22, for FY '23, and very soon it will be for FY '24. So, and I think that's concerning as a grantor organization.
Alan?
His hand up was
Reg?
before mine, and Andy's was up before mine.
Oh, Reg, then Andy, then Alan, then Sky.
Okay, so we're talking about IT upgrades and equipment for Columbia Association. Is that what we're talking about?
No.
So what we're talking about is IAT is a organization that was actually created by CA many years ago.
Okay.
And they basically do a lot of programming at the Chrysalis.
So what I'd like to know is what do they want? What services do they want us to help them fund? What are we giving them? If we give them $200,000, what is the money for?
So it should be everybody should have a copy of the letter, so that information should be in the letter that was sent
I
out.
understand, but I'm just asking now.
It's operations, programming. I don't have the letter in front of me right now.
Well, it wasn't published, that's why it's not in front of you, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's part of the thing.
It was sent out late.
When did it come out?
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Right.
And I didn't see it.
Looking for it.
It was 2 days ago.
Andy?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Your mic?
Your mic? No one can hear you?
yeah, I was gonna say, we have given them money in the past, but it hasn't gone to them because they have not fulfilled the requirements. And, part of the requirements is the audited financials. And I just have problems trying to give them more money, which will just simply wait, just like fiscal year 22 and the fiscal year 23 money, which is out there, waiting for the audits to come in. And frankly, I just can't imagine sending something in 48 hours before we're voting on the budget. And we have been talking about this for 5 months. So that's what I say.
Sky?
Yeah, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe last year's board voted a $200K donation to them, wrote a check for $100K, and would write a check for the remainder when all the financials were submitted. I asked IAT when they would submit those. I made this question in November, and the answer was by the end of the year, which December 31st. I asked the question again earlier this month, and the response was that, oh yeah, we're working on it. So it just, I just want to point out for everybody that they still have 100,000 coming to us if they can, okay, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, I just wanted to correct that before you went too far, that no funds were distributed. All 200,000 was contingent upon one or the other audit. So in order to get 100,000, they had to finish the 22 audit. In order to get the second was for the FY '23.
And they finished the 22?
No.
Oh, okay.
The last audited statements we have are from April 30, 2021.
Karen?
Thought I was next.
Oh, sorry, Alan and Karen. Alan.
For all the reasons that have been mentioned, and the fact that we know that Inter Arbor Corporation is facing a major change in their fiscal requirement. That fiscal may not be the right word in terms of taking over maintenance of the woods this year, that this would, for me, would be like, even if we did, it would be like tossing good money into a situation that's got too many question marks in it. So for all those reasons, I will not be supporting this motion.
Karen?
Why can't we just make it contingent like we did before, and then they don't get the audit and they don't get the money?
We could make it contingent.
I mean, it sounds like we might be sitting on some money. If we have made it contingent before, we must have budgeted for some money. So there must be some money sitting out there that we can give them if they do their audit. If they come to us tomorrow and say, we completed our audit, do we have to give them $200,000 from last year?
Yes.
Right, so we're sitting on 200,000, so.
Well,
That's not
the
how
current
budgets
year,
work.
though. That's the current, that's in '24, not in '25. And maybe, perhaps I misunderstood you.
I'm saying, do we have $200,000 in the budget that was supposed to go to Inner Arbor Trust? And is that money still there? And if so, why can't we just carry it over and make it contingent on them getting their audit?
We can't carry it over for accounting purposes. It's not possible. So it would have to be rebudgeted for FY25.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, we're voting on we're discussing an amendment, but I think you had your hand up, so do you have a question, Chris?
No,
Yeah, the amendments for $200K grant for IoT. Take it, you, Andy?
Call the question.
Okay, I'll call the question. Chris?
No.
Alan?
No.
Sky?
Abstain.
Keith?
No.
No.
Reg? Karen?
No.
Andy?
No.
Dietrich is not here. Bill?
No.
I'll abstain. The motion fails. 082. 072. I can't do math today for some reason. That brings us to the main motion on the approval of the capital and operating budgets. Are there any further discussion on the capital and operating budgets? Seeing none, I'll call the question. I'll call the question. Chris?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Sky?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
No.
Andy?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. The motion passes 7-2. That brings us to board discussion. General Counsel, progress on review of policies. Is John virtual? Sorry. Do you want to? Dennis, do you want to take over?
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine.
Virtual.
Okay.
Because I'm not ready.
Just trying to see, help out a bit.
Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you.
Okay, I don't know what else to do.
Oh, there we go. I think it's a volume problem on our side.
Okay. I think the memo that is in the packet is self-explanatory. It's taken quite a bit of time to go through the policies. I think we explained it when we discussed it before. We did identify the group of policies that are in the packet and identified, and I think most, if not all, are hopefully attached to the back that we think are can be archived, so that they're preserved, but they are no longer applicable. If the board wishes to go through those one by one or as a group and make a motion, either down the road or whatever, I think that those policies can be put to the wayside, and then we'll go on to the next aspect, try to see if we could put together policies that are duplicative. The problem is sometimes there are multiple sources for these policies. Most of these things are in paper. It's been very difficult to find, but we are making steady progress. The goal ultimately is to find a set of policies that we have and we could digitize. We can make them searchable, put them on the website so that they're easily viewed, and we don't have this system that, probably went out the window 40 years ago. So that's where we are right now.
So are there any questions on the policies, Alan?
I have three, John. One is, it was asserted by a resident that some of these policies aren't CA board policies, they are Columbia Council policies. Did that come up in your search?
Well, I think that there are some that were labeled as Columbia Council policies. I think I think those were considered to be governing basically transferred to the CA board. If you think it's, we've lived by those policies as a board in the Columbia Association. I suppose that if you think it's appropriate to reconvene as a Columbia Council and get rid of those, I'm not sure the corporate when that officially passed, but in terms of the governance of this organization, it has passed to the board from the Columbia Council. So, I think the point is well taken that they were originally passed as Columbia Council, but they in effect became Columbia Association Board of Directors policies, and that's why they were included in the grouping.
Yeah, I guess you asked if I thought it makes sense. I think the whole notion doesn't make any sense to me, except we're stuck with it because it's in our founding document. So I think just as we do in May, we technically have a meeting of the Columbia Council, we technically have a meeting of the members of CA, we technically have a board meeting, we probably should make sure that we parse those out. Thank you. The second one that stood out to me just as an example was number 10, the Columbus funding. And it talked about adding money to a budget. I mean, is that just a way we don't do it anymore in terms of doing policies to add something to the budget? Are we liable to find more of those, or is that just a one-off, do you think?
We haven't found any others so far. We would have brought them up. I'm hesitant to say that, this is the definitive list because,
sure,
the policies are in such rough shape that we sometimes find another group that someone has that we didn't know existed. But I'm not aware of any others. But okay. I don't want to say definitively.
I guess more to the point, like a decision we just made just now. If it had passed to add, if it had passed to add 200,000 to the budget, would that be considered a policy, or would that just be an amendment to the budget, and the budget is the policy, if you will?
That's an interesting question. I suppose it would depend on the context in which it was passed, whether it was passed in connection with the approval of a budget or if it was passed as a separate policy. I guess you'd have to look at the specific instance.
Okay, thanks. Last question. I'm looking at, for example, number 15, the whole village contingency fund, and I'm thinking more about, moving forward. There was a policy to have a village contingency fund. The board voted to abandon the fund. If we had to do it all over again, would it have been better practice for us not to create a new policy, but to have amended that policy or simply said, we didn't even know it necessarily existed. But if we had known it, once we know they exist, would it be a better procedure to go back and say we are going to amend or whatever, nullify this particular policy rather than passing another policy in such a situation?
And Susan could correct me because this is a budgetary area, but our research indicates that the village contingencies fund expired, so it's no longer in existence. So I think if you wanted to reinstitute, a similar type program, it would make more sense to do a new resolution and start anew.
Okay, that's not my, thank you, that I must not have been clear. I'm really just asking, if we had known that the April 11th, 2013 policy existed and knew where to find it, if that had been so, would it have been a better practice on the board's part to bring that policy up and either amend it or formally vote to nullify it rather than passing another policy rescinding it? In terms of keeping policy straight, I'm just trying to think what's the best practice in terms of.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think I think that's certainly one way to do it. And it may have been a better way. I guess it's, what the board's preference is. But if it was aware and, why start another whole new area when you don't have to? You might as well deal with what's there. So I understand what you're saying, and it may have indeed been a better practice to do that.
Great. Thank you, John.
Sky.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for taking this on. It's been very apparent to a lot of people that it's a huge project, and B, should have been done a couple of years ago, if not longer. So I certainly appreciate what you're doing, John. Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you.
Yeah, just two things. To Alan's point, I think a change management policy or change management process really is what we're looking for. And I think that your concerns would be addressed if we tackled that. I think that would be a good next step for next year or the next board. Related, I think that with 9 or 10 weeks until the next Columbia Council meeting, if there's any other policies that are found that are not or long inactive and superseded that were indeed passed by the Columbia Council years ago, we may want to just save those for that Columbia Council meeting that's coming up in 10 weeks and have them disposed of at that meeting. That seems to make a lot of sense. We could do a little forward thinking to do that. Just a simple recommendation.
Keith? Yeah, if there are new board members, I think we'd be re-explaining everything again. So I'd be more inclined to take this meeting and close this, open up a Columbia Council meeting, and then close that, and then come back and.
My apologies. I was saying if anything is discovered in between now and the Columbia Council meeting,
okay.
not these particular procedures here.
So one thing to clarify, we're not actually voting on this tonight. So this is the first reading of this. So that vote would happen in the future. But I think it is important that. I guess it is complicated whether we're meeting as the Columbia Council, or meeting as the members, or meeting as the board, but those are three distinct organizations, and we need to make sure that if we're going to be archiving policies for the organization, that we're meeting in the correct form. So I think it would be a good idea that we separate the Columbia Council policies from the board policies, and we handle those in the correct meetings.
Yeah. Just on background and channeling my best Barbara Russell, the Columbia Association Board of Directors / Columbia Council, once it was turned over to the residents and not governed by officers of HRD, operated for about 10 years, believing that they were the Columbia Council most of the year and meeting as the Board of Directors only quarterly, when in fact the HOA Act had been passed and they were in fact having CA board meetings, they just didn't know it. And that was officially codified in the early 1990s that you're having board meetings, you're not having council meetings. So some of these things that are under the signature of a Columbia Council meeting, most likely at that time in the mid-'80s, because the HOA Act was passed, was in fact a CA board meeting. They just didn't know it at the time.
But they're still listed as Columbia Council policies, so I think they need to be handled as such. I do have a question. So you're asking us to archive them. How many of these policies have already been previously removed? Are these policies still in force? Are they in effect? What's the status of the policies today before we archive them?
Well, we don't see anything where they've been rescinded. So that's the reason we're bringing them to your attention, because technically they're still in effect. There's nothing that we've seen saying their board has taken formal action to rescind them. Now, some of them may be by other actions. You would consider that they've been superseded. But, for example, I'm not aware of the non-smoking policy being superseded, even though the law is quite different. So the response is, I think we need to do something because we don't see any evidence that they have been officially rescinded by the board.
So basically, these are sort of, I don't want to use the term zombie policies, but they're policies that are in effect, they're just not being followed because they're superseded by other events. Is that a correct statement? Or?
I think he's saying.
Yeah, I think they've been in some cases superseded, in some cases no longer relevant. There's Columbus. The board got out of the business of doing the Columbus, but it's still sitting as a policy out there. I think to make this clean and to make make clear that these policies are no longer in effect. The board should take action to make clear that although they may have an historical basis, they are not in effect at present.
Reg?
So I found it very entertaining as I was reading through this, that there's an elimination of sex classification as the basis of playing golf, and I'm a golfer. So obviously this is historical and kind of, we're correcting this, but, they were eliminating any sex classification as a basis of playing golf. I found that to be very interesting, but so I agree.
So,
we were ahead of our time, yes.
Any further questions? I actually do have one question on the last policy, the village contingency fund. So if we archive this, what policy is superseding this? Because right now in this policy, it says that village limitations on cash reserves is 15%. So do we have a policy that supersedes this text? How does that work? Or does this, or would this line go away?
Well, I think I've responded, to your questions you had earlier today. I think that may cover it, but I could defer to Susan. But my understanding was that the contingency fund expired, so it no longer in effect. But if Susan has something to say in that regard, I'll defer to her.
So the contingency fund is gone. So I don't know, I don't understand keeping a policy for something that no longer exists. So you had asked earlier today or yesterday or recently about what policy governs the excess cash calculation and village allocation, I believe. Yep. And there is no policy that applies to either one of those. The allocation was approved by the board. The new methodology, it's even on page 102 in the budget, it says on November 9th, 2017, that when those discussions occurred from the work team and I was not part of the work team, so but when it was a village and CA staff work team that looked at the allocation formula, in their work product, and there's the report that was part of the backup to that in October and November 2017 meetings, they recommended some changes to the excess cash reserve limits, which were not approved ultimately, I believe. They stayed at 20%, or they were approved at 20%. So they're not policies. It's part of the management contract. So I don't think there's an issue as you are trying to raise.
So the part of the management contract is the limitation on the cash reserves and the annual charge share that goes to the villages?
I really can't speak to that. I don't know. I know the excess cash calculations in there, but I think the allocation is separate and part of was approved separately by the board. And who were more directly involved may know that.
Yeah, I mean, the allocation was approved by the board, the allocation formula, the assessment share.
Mike.
Yeah, the allocation share formula was approved by the board, as Susan alluded to, looking November 2017. And I mean, if you look in the back of your budget, the allocation formula is there. Not everything the board does is a policy. The board takes a lot of votes, but not everything is a policy. And part of the reason we're trying to clean all this up is as you kind of see tonight. There's Columbia Council, there's minutes, there's actually policy. It's been a mishmash, and so I think going forward, and I do thank John for his work, that we're going to get this all straightened out and have official policies and know where they're at. But yeah, this was an allocation. This was a budget decision, the assessment share.
But it was a budget decision from 7 years ago now, 8 years ago. It's from 2017.
But the allocation formula has not changed. Right. Nobody's changed the allocation formula.
But I guess my point is, if we have something that continues year after year after year, I think a good practice would be to make sure that it's publicized, it's memorialized somehow, versus having to try to fish through old minutes to figure it out. So I guess my concern is if we archive this, which it sounds like it's a reasonable thing to do, if there are parts of this or things that are still in effect based on cash reserves, based on annual charge share that is still in effect, I think it's important that we memorialize that and publish it so everybody knows about it versus trying to.
One, all the villages know about it because they all signed their management contract.
Yeah, it's a contract.
You know, I mean, if the village doesn't know about it, I have a little question.
I was actually referring to the residents.
And so we're talking here about the allocation. The allocations are published in the budget. Every year, you can find the allocation formula, and that's not the only one. There's a bunch of allocation formulas that tells us, you know, how we do interest, how we do, and those things, you know, have been publicly talked about when they were really originally adopted, and no one's seen any reason to update it yet. But I do understand that probably in a year or two, you know, there will be another look
Page
at
102.
Yeah, page 102.
Oh, 102?
Yeah, I mean, it's the allocation formula. So it's public knowledge. It's been in the budget for years.
When it was approved by the board.
Some of these things, it might be, even if it is in there, it might be appropriate to not have it be at the board policy level anyway.
Right.
And it could be just operational management of the budget and the process. That's another way to look at it. I'm not arguing for one way or the other. I'm just saying that maybe getting rid of it at the board level is a good thing.
Any other discussion on this? Guy?
I was reading the policy about Operation Homefront Heroes. And John, is it your recommendation to put that to bed? Basically, it gives a membership to the dependents of a deployed service member for OEF and OIF.
Well, I think it was specific passed for the Iraqi war. I don't know if it had a broader application than that. I'm not sure that it's been followed since, because I'm sure there are some people who are deployed who lived in Colombia. So, I mean, you know, it's up to the board if you want to continue that policy and publicize it and make it applicable. I mean, you know, it's your choice. From looking at the policy, I thought it was passed specifically in response to a specific situation. So it's in a war that's no longer there. So that's why we thought it should be taken off. But if you want the board's preference is to continue that, you know, by all means, I think you can do that.
Reg?
So no, I understand why you would think that way, but we are still working under Operations Iraqi Freedom. I mean, though the war is basically scaled down, we still have troops stationed within Iraq and Enduring Freedom. You know, though we don't have anyone in Afghanistan right now for obvious reasons, but definitely we still have troops in harm's way and fighting against ISIS and other entities, Taliban and other entities within Iraq. So I would appeal to you to keep that one, at least that one, open.
Dan?
Just want to clarify, this is the first time I've actually ever heard of this, so it has not been enforced or in place since long before I came, because literally this is the first reading. It was the first time I've heard of it.
I didn't know it was in existence either until
so
Scott just showed
it's
it
not
to
an active policy. Somebody had chosen to end it even before my time.
Alan?
Well, then that dovetails with what first of all, my question to you, just because I'm not familiar with military ways of being, is an operation like Operation Iraqi Freedom, is that considered over and yet we still have troops there? Are those two separate things? Or as long as we have troops there, is that operation formally still in operation?
As long as we have troops on the ground, we still consider it an open operation.
An open operation, okay, thank you.
Until we close out our troops and we bring everybody, remove our troops, pull it back to Kuwait and other places.
Got it. So, and you answered my other question that people haven't been getting memberships. And I guess this raises, to me, the importance, whatever we do with this particular one, that we be more mindful of expiration dates. So something could have been written into that policy to say this will expire when this operation is formally finished, or whatever. And that would help some of these other ones to be, that could have been expired on their own.
Keith? I think part of this also goes back to governance. We're cleaning these things up, but realistically, it's part of a governance process, whether it's annually or biannually or whatever frequency, every one of the policies in the future should be touched. So we shouldn't end up in this situation if we have a good governance, a good governance process moving forward. So
every 50 years, not a good idea?
Yeah. So and getting back to that policy, one thing that might be a good idea is you could look at expanding it to make it more generic, so it doesn't apply to one particular event or one particular mission. Just make it something that's more generic, so it applies to a greater variety of situations. My concern is that we have we've got policies and somehow they get forgotten. That we had this policy and people have forgotten about it, and therefore no one's taking advantage of it. And the question I have is, how do we memorialize our policies so that they don't get forgotten about so easily? Sky?
Well, part of doing that is to regularly, annually, biannually go through all the policies. I did that for APL. I did it every 6 months. So I would, I kept all the policies, and every 6 months I would go to this department and say, is this policy still in effect? And are the procedures, do they need updating, that type of thing?
Dennis?
So, John, I thought had a plan to put a sunset provision in the policies. And so they would sunset out after 5 years or so unless they were renewed. That way they would automatically expire.
That's one idea that we threw out last time. Obviously, it'd be up to the board, but we could do that. Or an alternative is to it expires or it has to be reconsidered every 5 years, 3, whatever, and automatically be brought up to reaffirm the policy or change it. Or if the policy is amended in the interim, then the 5-year period would be extended beyond that. But if something's sitting there and nothing has happened for a period of time, it would either, according to what the board said, be sunsetted or it would have to vote to reconsider.
Eric, time's up.
Okay, I'll get to Karen Rudge and we'll be done with this.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that concerns me is that, and a lot of these policies, it's very funny reading them. However, I'm a little concerned that the board is kind of flying without a parachute here, is that we should be using the policies when we're making decisions so that, so I know it's not for discussion tonight, but in that policy, that proposal that I put forward is I wanted it to be transparent to everybody. I wanted it to be on a website. I wanted it to be handed to people when it was pertinent to the discussion. And I feel like the board could really, we probably have some policies out there that we might have been violating, and it would be helpful if once we get this all cleaned up, if we had the policies that applied to what we were talking about each meeting. I think that would give us a level of understanding, a little bit more comfort about what we're doing.
Reg?
So you probably want to kill me after this, but I would really...
Do you have a policy against that?
Do we have a policy against that one too? Or for it? No, actually, I was hoping after we got this all cleaned up that this is turned over to the staff and the staff would run it from then, because I really don't think it's really it's within our purview to sit there and go through each and every one and say yay, nay. I think once we give instructions on what we're looking for, we give it to the staff and let the staff take care of it.
Okay.
Just my thought.
Keith? Yeah, and along those lines, I think part of what I agree with Karen
And along those lines, I think that's the reason why I like to see things go through the staff before it comes to the board, so that there's an opportunity to take a look at what's being considered across the board, and then also bring the relevant policies. If it's an easement, they would be required to bring the policy. If it's, the tot lot, if there's a policy associated, all of that would need to come as part of, any discussion. So I agree that it needs to be there, but I don't know that, we have to spend all this time trying to figure out which policy it is. I think that's the reason why the staff can go back and, present things to us so that we have full information about the discussion.
Andy?
I just want to remind everyone that John told us that his final goal is to develop a functioning and user-friendly database that would enable periodic review by future boards.
Cool.
So that's the ultimate goal. But in order to do that, we got to clean up the policies.
It sounds like a very good goal. So that brings us to our next topic on the agenda.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, John.
That brings us to the next topic is new business, old business, topic 8A2.
Yay.
Any discussion on 8A2?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I believe at our last meeting, we tabled this subject, so I'd like to make a motion to take this topic off the table.
So moved. There's a second on that, Karen?
I'll second it, but then I have a question.
Sure.
Bill, if this was really important to you, why are we taking this off the agenda?
Oh, no, it was tabled on the last agenda.
No, you're taking
He's
it.
trying to show off his knowledge of parliamentary.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was really confused. I thought you really wanted to, I thought you were going to write something up for us. and we were gonna do-
Actually,
I don't agree with you, Karen.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
technically, this is under board discussion, so we could discuss it on the agenda, and you're untabling the motion at the next meeting.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just want to make sure
We wanna
that
be
when we got
technical
to
about
the
it.
third meeting, we didn't go, oh, wait, it's
So
tabled.
yeah, you can untable it at the next meeting when we actually take a vote, because your motion was to vote.
All right. My apologies for the 90-second delay.
But we can still discuss them. We can still discuss the new business, old business agenda format.
Sure.
So did you want to go first?
I'll just give a little preamble. What I did was I worked with John and staff and said, this is not something that should be new. There's got to be some existing policies that speak to. And I was working off of the Columbia Association Board of Directors governing documents from April 17th, 2017. And this is what's in the packet is a result of that particular section on meetings and work sessions for the CA Board of Directors. Now, there's a bunch of changes in here. I hope that just reading the text and not working with what's on the right-hand side was fairly clean. And the changes, I made sure the tracks were there so that you could follow what was done. And essentially what it does is it just sets up the meetings to be new business, old business. There's a caveat that says that unless it's an emergency, you can't vote on items that are under the new business agenda. They have to be transferred to old business and vote on at a subsequent meeting. And that just puts that all together. That's kind of the start there.
Sky.
There's just one error on the first page.
Sure.
Item 3, during the month of November, I believe you mean during the month of December.
No, we only have one in November.
No,
I know.
You got 2 Novembers.
We had 2 Novembers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have November in number 2 and November
number
in
3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
So, Alan.
First page. It would help me. I appreciate what you said about having the corrections on the right. Can we get a Word version of this so we can play with the track changes and see what the original was?
The original's actually behind it.
In Word format?
The markup's behind it.
In Word format, so
Okay.
we can play on our screen with it?
I think what I do is I made the changes here and I sent them along to Dennis. So if you can provide the Word document, then I think that would be.
That'd be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just trying to help out.
I appreciate it.
So I do have a question on the paragraph that starts from time to time, the board session, the board of directors may hold a work session.
Yes.
Are these work sessions the scheduled work sessions, or are these just unscheduled work sessions?
That would be unscheduled. That would be the from time to time portion there. There may be a special topic that the board may want to bring in some subject matter experts and just have a work session. and have a discussion about a particular topic and just work from a work session format versus a formal meeting format. But the intent is that would be a rare occasion. It wouldn't be
So at every meeting, which would be mostly twice a month, most months,
Yes.
you could vote at every meeting.
during the old business section.
Yeah, during the old
Yes.
business section. Alan?
I'm not clear, I thought that we were told that anytime we get together, it's a meeting. We can call it whatever we want to call it, but it's still a meeting. So I'm not clear, and we could always create an agenda that doesn't consist of any votes, it only consists of new business discussion. So that feels like a unnecessary section, that we can't hold a work session, we can only hold meetings. We can always do this anyway, schedule the kind of topics you're talking about. I'm not clear why we would have to have it as part of the policy.
Just as a response, this establishes a format for meetings, new business and old business. If, for instance, we wanted to revive the Columbus and provide transportation, and we wanted to engage local officials on what it costs to run a bus company, the thought behind the work session would be that, yes, it would in fact be under the Homeowners Association Act, a meeting, but it would be a discussion between the board and subject matter experts to discuss a particular topic and limit it to that topic. We would not have to do new business and old business and engage all the other pieces that are in here for that particular meeting. Because what we wanted to really do is get information and allow the board to share ideas versus some of the formalities that are involved in the meeting.
Except we often, well, two questions then. First of all, a comment and then a question. First, it seems to me we often do that anyway in meetings. We have, what's his name, from Howard Hughes here to talk to us about things. We have other experts in during our meetings to talk to us. So I don't know that that requires a separate format. And I guess I want to make sure, and this will betray the fact that I have not read this rainbow document multiple times. Does this policy require that we have old business and new business and other formalities, all those other trappings you were talking about? Or can we, under this policy proposed, could we set up a meeting that was all new business? That could be our agenda.
Okay.
Well, if there's no old business, there's no old business.
Well, the agenda would
just
still
asking
say
Bill
old
about his
business,
policy
but
that he's
there would be
proposed.
nothing under old business.
Hey, there's a couple of things there. First, with respect to work sessions, I put the work session language in here to allow for that to occur. If it's the will of the board that work sessions are not something that the board has an appetite for, trial balloon. I really don't have an issue with that. My preference is to keep it, but I'm not going to really push back on it. With respect to all new business and no old business, I imagine like the first meeting of a CA Board of Directors, first meeting of the year, first Board of Directors, unless there was something that carried over from the previous board, there may not be any business, and I would imagine under old business, you would write no business to conduct or something like that, and that would take care of it. Would that be, as far as adherence, I think that typically we write these so we would adhere to them. I wouldn't want to get into the business of exceptions unless it was written in as an exception. We want to write policies that we're going to follow, right? And that's really the art, is to be fair enough that everybody can easily follow it, but not so, detailed that it becomes a chore. So, yeah, I would say that if you had no old business to conduct, you would just state no old business and move on. We could cite some other, authorities on that, but I would be fine with that.
So I do have a question for Dennis. So we're basically, this would go from a system where we have 12 board meetings and 8 work sessions to 20 meetings. Does that add any additional burden to staff, and what is the ramifications of that?
I'm sure that it does, and I'll find out before the next meeting.
Bill?
If I can speak to that, I've been thinking about that, and some folks have asked me about it. And the biggest addition is the accounting for minutes at every single meeting. If we're conducting business as we do, and it's just a different structure, we'll have the same number of votes. So rather than having 10 motions and votes in the meeting, it's 5 at 2 meetings. It essentially works out to be about the same. There might be more consistent work involved, but the volume should not change appreciably. That is my estimation going into this.
The other question I have, and this is sort of a general question, so this would go to 20 meetings a year. Is that the right number? I'll just throw that question out there.
I think that's a very important question. This is a policy change directed at structure. If we want to talk about having more meetings, or I'm leaning towards less meetings.
Well, your policy actually lists the meetings a year. It lists when the meetings occur. So given that you're proposing a policy that actually lists when the meetings actually occur, I think it's appropriate to throw out the question.
That is a legacy of the original document. If we wish to change that is certainly part of the discussion, and I'm open to that.
So I'll just throw that out there. Any other comments on this agenda item? Seeing no other comments, that brings us to...
Just a quick thanks for everybody for your time in considering this.
That brings us to reports and questions only under reports. Does anybody have any questions regarding the reports? Alan, you look like you might have a question.
I do, but I got to get to where my questions are. I just wanted us to be clear with people, because we had residents talk about the $5 million budget surplus, and I know we've talked about that before. It's not my understanding that we said, oh, there's a $5 million budget surplus, so let's give the staff bonuses. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Thank you.
If I could add one comment.
Sure.
So it wasn't just a matter that people were working for half pay in some cases and doing the same work. CA laid off a good number of people, and I personally had to make some phone calls. That was the most difficult time in the organization that I ever experienced. So this was not a case, again, this was not, we were not throwing money at people. And as an organization, we suffered a lot, and we still haven't fully recovered. There's some positions that will never be refilled.
Karen.
Yeah, Dennis, I have a quick question. Did we take out a PPP loan is that what they're called, during COVID?
Susan, I don't.
To keep the payroll up?
No, we couldn't get one.
We couldn't get one? Okay, I was just curious, because I think under those, don't you have to pay, like if you let employees go, my next question was going to be, if you let employees go and you had one of those loans, I think you had to still pay them. That's what I was going to ask.
I don't know, and I didn't look into it further when we were not eligible.
Okay.
Did we not get it because we were a nonprofit, or?
I don't recall now, but.
Just curious.
I do recall we tried.
Yeah.
We looked into it. We looked into everything.
Any other questions on the reports? Proposed new topics. Any proposed new topics? Helen.
Yeah, I'd like us to discuss the language that residents get about interacting with the board outside of their 3 or 5 minutes that residents speak out.
Is there a specific concern you have?
Is there a what?
Is there a specific concern you have?
Yeah, I think it's stupid. For all the reasons I laid out in my email to everybody.
Specifically,
Specifically, we are supposed to represent the public. How can we represent? It limits us in our ability to represent the public if the public is told they can't talk to us. I'm not suggesting that the public be able to talk to us in ways that disrupt the meeting. I did hear what you answered in terms of when things are hybrid. I don't expect members of the public from the virtual to just sort of start talking to us. But if we're on a break, or if resident really has something they want me to hear and they want to motion me over, I want to be able to go do that and not feel like the staff has told them, you can't do that.
Dennis?
So I think that goes back to 2022, which predates me just by a hair. And so I would suggest that we let staff look at it and come up with some language that we can all agree on.
I'm glad to do that. I just didn't want to expect that you would do that just because
Karen?
Well, I looked at the language and I said, well, we can.
Karen?
I think we should just take it off. I don't know what analysis there is. I think we should just take it off. If you want to have something on there that asks people to be respectful, that's totally fine, but I don't think it should say don't talk to the board members.
Raj?
So I had a concern with it. I didn't understand exactly what the parameters were. Sometimes, I've gone out and greeted members of people that, residents that live in Long Reach, just so I could, get to, talk with them for a few seconds. So I had a problem with that as well.
Bill?
Reg, my understanding, and having served on the board last year, when we had all hybrid residents speak out, the concern was that with Zoom meetings, people can just make comments as they're sitting in the audience during the meeting. And the point was, if you're hybrid, if you're coming in virtually, please don't start discussions with board members in the middle of the board meeting. You have your time during resident speak out, but after that, then please be respectful, turn your mic off. That's what the intent was. It wasn't related to the in-person, talking to people, and that was never the intent. I agree that the language is vague and we need to clean it up.
Yeah.
But that was, I believe, the intent.
So I didn't, like I said, I didn't understand, and it wasn't clear in the intent. So if we clean it up, maybe that, it would be something as Dennis said, something we could all agree with.
Right.
Karen? Sorry,
I was
Karen.
just going to say, I think we don't let people talk anyway. We have to move them like there's some kind of thing we do with Zoom where they're in a certain waiting area and then we move them into an area where they can speak. So they're not able to talk to us anyway.
Sounds like another policy that got superseded by reality.
But Karen, that's a new thing. That's new. That was not when we started. That capability was not there.
It's been that way since I've been here,
Since
and I
you've been
remember
here,
that
right.
from last year from watching
Right.
board meetings that
Right.
that was able to
But
be done. So for
when
at
we
least-
first started
So for at least 2
going-
years, though, we've been able to do that. So I think
Yeah.
that we can take that language and.
I think it also makes sense to take it off. I don't think we need to make an agenda item and then take votes to take that language off. I think we can just remove the language from the instructions and put in something that's a little bit,
Yeah, the intent was
a
very
little bit more
similar.
palatable.
Speaks to the intent.
It was similar to what Eric reads every time we start our resident speak out, when you read the language back to back like that, you go, they're not written the same way, but you could see that they're going towards the same goal there. And it's just a matter of clearing it up, I think.
I think the issue is some people read the text as is and say, oh, they can't, a board member and a resident can't talk to each other at 6:30 or 6:45 in the parking lot or something like that. I think some people read it pretty strictly. I don't think it's meant to be read that way. I certainly don't interpret it that way. So I think it can be just cleaned up, and I don't think we need to make it an agenda item to do so. Sky?
I just wanted to, I'm not commenting on this necessarily, I just wanted to say I agree with you that we don't need to put it on an agenda to take a vote, and I just wanted to memorialize this because I consider it to be a reasonable conversation with reasonable action without us all having to take a vote to get something done.
I second that.
Now you just formalized it, jeez.
Duly noted.
Great, let's smoke.
Duly noted, and this should make it into the minutes. Sky?
Yeah, since we're talking about residents speak out, one thing that you read each time is, please note that due to time constraints, it may be necessary to limit the number of people at verbal residents speak out. We've never done that in the past couple of years, and I'm wondering who would make the decision based on what to limit the number of people in residents speak out?
I believe that's a decision that goes to the chair in conjunction with the president. Typically, my point of view is I want to hear from as many people as possible. So I've never actually limited the number of people, even when we had one resident speak out lasted a couple hours. I want to hear from everyone, so I don't make arbitrary cuts. But that's me.
That's kind of like a warning that has.
If we got like 1,000 people signed up, we can't be here for 1,000 times 3 minutes. That's not going to be practical. But generally speaking, I'm willing to listen to people as long as we have a reasonable amount of time to do so. And I'm pretty flexible with that. Dennis?
And we'll know the day before,
Yep.
right? We get the sign up. So if there are 100 people that sign up, we'll know, and then we can have that conversation.
We've gone through quite a few last year. We had some pretty long lists last year. We got through it. Any other comments, questions? That brings us to chair remarks. Thank you everyone for coming today. We completed the budget process, and the next big goal for us is the strategic plan. So I look forward to working with everyone to try to come up with a strategic plan for not just next year, but keep in mind it's the next several years. So it's something that's going to direct our organization going forward for quite a while. So just want to make sure everybody keeps thinking about that. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Any objections to adjourning? Seeing no objections, the meeting is adjourned at 8:47.
What are you doing here? Yeah, I know. It feels like a meeting.